Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. We are previewing Arkansas and Ole Miss. The Rebels just missed a win by Brian Branch's fingertips in their game with Alabama. And Arkansas had a very unexpected 13-10 game with LSU, in which LSU came to Fayetteville and won. I guess the big story this week, well, two things is, first of all, what's up with Arkansas's defense lately? It's showing up. And second of all, what do we know about KJ Jefferson playing or not playing? I don't think we know as we do this on Sunday night, which is a good time to tell you. We do live streams on Wednesday night in which we update our predictions and things like that. But with that, Blayne, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, it was quite interesting to see a red hot LSU team come into Fayetteville, somebody who had been, putting up a good amount of points lately. Jaden Daniels doing all these kind of things. And man, did Drew Sanders and Bumper Pool and that group of Arkansas defenders really kind of hold them at bay and 13 points, total on the day. It was just really the quite opposite what we thought. We thought that the Arkansas offense would really kind of rule the day. But when KJ Jefferson is unable to play because of that shoulder, that bruised clavicle, all that kind of stuff, then, it really, and that didn't come out till like an hour before game time that he wasn't officially going to play. But I think they probably knew, going into it, of course. And Malik Hornsby ended up, getting pulled, and they went to another option there in Fortin. And, I don't know what it looks like going forward, but I do know one thing. I don't think it's going to be as icy chilly as it was that day. I don't know. I hadn't looked at the weather, but man, it was Chris, that was not good football conditions. Some people call that football weather. I've never understood that, why it's called football weather, because that is just miserable trying to play football in that kind of weather.
Yeah, I mean, football's also played in 90-degree heat too, but for some reason that's not football weather. I think it all goes back to probably NFL films and John Facenda and the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. But we digress. Let's talk about Arkansas's offense, which is very different when KJ Jefferson is in there as opposed to when he's not. The Razorbacks on the year, and Jefferson has missed some games. All that mixed together, Arkansas averaging 29.9 points a game, Ole Miss giving up 22.4. Arkansas has lost 8 fumbles. Ole Miss has recovered 6. The Hogs have thrown 5 picks. I think only 2 of those or 3 of those by Jefferson. Ole Miss has picked off 6. Ole Miss 28 sacks. Arkansas has given up 23. Arkansas runs 46 rushing plays and 30 passing plays a game. Again, that takes sacks out. A sack would be counted as a pass play. And teams are running the ball 36 times against Ole Miss and throwing it 36. So that's balance in terms of how you approach the Rebels. Arkansas is running 5.2 per rush play, 7.4 per pass play, Ole Miss giving up 4.7 rush play and 5.7 per pass play. Ole Miss's defense, I think, early benefited from a weak schedule that inflated some stats, so started to come back to earth, but good performance against Alabama. And Arkansas, with Jefferson out, Rocket Sanders had, I don't know, maybe his worst game of the year. That just was a completely different offense. And so whatever you think of this matchup, a ton of it hinges on whether Jefferson plays or not.
And Vegas thinks that we should say coming into it that the opening line that I'm seeing at FanDuel right now is Ole Miss, a 3.5-point favorite on the road. So they like the Rebels, the people out in the desert do right now. But, here's the thing. There's so much uncertainty. I would venture to say, Chris, that you're going to see this line move depending on who's playing and how things go throughout the week. But in terms of this Ole Miss defense, you're right. It's kind of been a sandwich effect here, right? They started out great. That was the kind of the top piece of bread there. And then the middle, that sandwich was not too tasty for them.
It was a shark sandwich.
Yeah, it was not
get the reference there.
Absolutely not a good one. And then, I mean, just think about it. A couple weeks ago, giving up over 300 yards rushing to an Auburn team that has been basically inept most of the year offensively. And then, you know, they come out and hold the Alabama Crimson Tide to three yards a carry and just over 108 yards. So that defensive front played like the old land shark defenses, so to speak, this past weekend, but couldn't have enough complementary football over there from the offense. We'll talk about Jackson Dart and company in a minute, but here's the thing. I may be in the minority here, Chris, but I watched, you know, the Alabama and LSU game and thought that Cade Fortin, you know, acquitted himself nicely. I thought he came in there and tried to at least give him a little bit of a jump start, because it just seemed like Malik Hornsby was a little bit bogged down, almost kind of the same issues that Mike Wright was having for Vanderbilt earlier in the year, right? You know, wanting to knowing that you're an elite athlete, trying to take off and run and not really, you know, trusting the system, going through the reads enough there. So it'll be interesting for me to see who starts if KJ Jefferson is unavailable. But I do know one thing. They definitely have to get Rocket Sanders going again, just because, you know, 2 games in a row now that he's been under his usual amount of production. And listen, the run game for Arkansas is where everything starts offensively, right? So it's going to be an interesting matchup of an Ole Miss team that, you know, in the last couple of games has really started to stop the run a lot better, and an Arkansas team that wants to run it, and they're going to be doing so at home. And this is a big one, you know, for Arkansas, because if they win, they become bowl eligible on this. And then, of course, Ole Miss is only – last year was the first time that they had won 10 games in their program's history ever. Isn't that crazy? The first time ever
crazy
that Ole Miss has ever won 10 games. So if they win this one, they've got a good shot, you know, to make the Egg Bowl the week after their second 10-win season in program history. So a lot on the line still in terms of pride and you know, steps to take, milestones to get to for these two programs.
Okay, a word from our sponsor, Stakes. That's Stakes. You can predict sports. If you do it better than the crowd, you've got a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can submit their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Use our invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. It's a predictions app, not a betting app. Free to join, free to play. Have some fun and help out those who help our show. When the Rebels have the ball, they're averaging 36.1 a game, and Arkansas is giving up 28.9. Arkansas has recovered 6 fumbles. Ole Miss has only lost 4. The Rebels have thrown 8 picks. Arkansas has got 6. Arkansas had 35 quarterback sacks, but Ole Miss has only given up 10. So, boy, that's a strength on strength. Rush plays. Arkansas giving up 5.2 a rush. Ole Miss getting 5.7 a rush. And Quinshon Judkins, man, that kid's so good.
Yeah.
In fact, I wonder if Ole Miss gets him the ball more on that final drive if we're not talking about a 9-1 Ole Miss team. But that's not how it went down. Pass plays, Ole Miss averaging 7.8 a play. Arkansas giving up 7.1. A lot's been made of Arkansas's pass defense and the injuries and the struggles. But again, you start adding the sacks in, and the pass defense is better than you would think because of that. But Ole Miss not giving them up, to me, is kind of a big thing here in that matchup.
Oh, absolutely. And they will get after you up front. That Barry Odom, and I'm talking about Arkansas here, Barry Odom's defense, Chris, he finds ways, and he did this even back when he was the head coach at Missouri. He just finds ways, creative ways to get pressure on quarterbacks, and they're going to have to do that with Jackson Dart. You saw that was the key to the end of that game with Alabama being able to, and listen, Jackson Dart, in my opinion, made it easy on him, Chris, because there was times where it's almost like first read's not there, and he decides he's going to kind of hesitate a little bit and then try to outrun a very athletic defensive front for Alabama. I thought that was not a wise decision for him to make, and he made it several times at the end of that game. But listen, it'll turn out no different for him, I think, if he tries to do the same against. I mean, you got guys like Chris Paul Jr., 2 sacks against a athletic guy like Jaden Daniels in this last game. Of course, everybody knows Drew Sanders. Landon Jackson got in on the fun. Eric Gregory. They've got all these guys that get after the quarterback up front. So playing at home. Ole Miss coming off a crushing loss, to an Alabama team when they still had everything out in front of them. Now it's incumbent upon Lane Kiffin to play psychologist this week, right, and get into his young quarterback Jackson Dart's head and see where we're at and see, can you learn from some of these mistakes, as bad as maybe that last couple play sequence was there for Ole Miss. Can you learn from those things? Because here's the thing. I think offensively, Chris, if they're able to get Judkins going early and they do get, Mingo involved, it seems like they need to get Mingo involved more, getting more touches in different ways instead of just trying to chuck it down the field. If Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins and that Lane Kiffin offense do jump out early, especially if KJ Jefferson is unable to play, my question to you is does Arkansas have that kind of style in them with those guys? I don't know that they would. So I think the game control and the game pace here is going to be very important for Arkansas.
Well, look, if Jefferson doesn't play, this is kind of an easy call. Ole Miss to win, Ole Miss to cover. Even if Jefferson does play, I think the thing that bothers me is just how well Ole Miss, from an Arkansas perspective, how well Ole Miss runs the ball. Judkins is a stud. Now, where you could see some of that given back is Dart's decision-making isn't the best at times, and Arkansas can get pressure on quarterbacks. But, again, that offensive line is one of the better ones in the league. Penalties, we talk about that a lot. Arkansas, 59 yards a game in penalties, Ole Miss 60, so that's kind of a non-factor. Ole Miss hasn't been on the road a ton, Blaine. I don't know where that factors in. I don't know. I know this. I know if Jefferson doesn't play, I'm concerned for Arkansas because I just don't think there's enough offense in there with what Ole Miss can do. And I think the number that's kind of standing out to me is Arkansas's rush defense. And again, what the rushing attempts and yards looks better than it is because that takes sacks out of it.
Yeah.
Once you take sacks out of it, they're giving up 5.2 a carry. Again, Ole Miss has not just got Judkins, it's got other backs. Dart can run. I think, and Lane Kiffin this year, he runs the ball a lot.
Yeah, he does.
I think that's, I'm looking at the numbers like, is that right? But I think it is. 47 rush plays to 28 pass plays.
Yeah.
That's not what you think of per game with Lane Kiffin. But, I just see the way Judkins is running the ball. It feels like to me Ole Miss can kind of dictate the kind of game it wants. Now, where I'm also confused is Arkansas's defense, because let's rewind a bit. We talked about how atrocious that defense was. It gives up 13 to LSU. It gives up 21 to a good, Hugh Freeze knows how to coach offense. And then it gave up 27 to Auburn before that. But
the weird thing is that Arkansas, the pass defense, the secondary has been the part that's been so maligned throughout the year and in question most of the time. And they've been okay, against the run at times, but that seems to have flipped here towards the end of the year because they held in check a good, very, very good, in my opinion. I think overall talent-wise, the best wide receiver core in the SEC, LSU. They held them 86 yards passing. Jaden Daniels had. So now it seems like the strengths maybe have flipped here recently, or maybe that was just on a per game basis. But you're right. You look at a LSU team who has, Josh Williams and John Emery and Noah Cain, who aren't Quinshon Judkins, and they, kind of gathered together to go for almost 200 yards rushing in this last game. Now, listen, I know some of that might have been out of necessity with how the conditions were and things like that. But you know, I think you're correct. I think that the key to this game will be the lines of scrimmage and getting and Quinshaw Junkins, Chris. He doesn't need
Ooh,
much
so
push.
good.
He doesn't need much push. We saw Alabama had some guys coming to fill the big run that he broke off at the end, the last drive. Brian Branch was there. He came up and he was there ready to fill that gap, fill that run, and Quinshaw Junkins just made him miss. And then once he did, gone. So I agree with you. I think that even if Jefferson does play, I just think Ole Miss is the matchups are in favor of them, and I would take right now at that 3.5 on the road. I would take Ole Miss to win and Ole Miss to cover.
Okay, here's the game that I have in mind and thinking how this could play out. It's back when Arkansas was hot before all the injuries in the schedule kicked in, and they played that CBS game where Arkansas had a chance for a hot minute in the second half, and then it kind of fell apart. And the reason it fell apart was because Alabama just went nuts in rushing. Gibbs had a 76-yard run. Milroe went for 77. That's the game that Young got hurt. Alabama rushed for 317 yards. That's not adjusted for sacks. Gibbs went for 206. And Lane Kiffin's one of the sharpest guys around. I'm sure he saw that game. And to me, I think even if Jefferson plays, and that would certainly make a difference, make a huge difference. I just think what Ole Miss can do on the ground is what's going to dictate this game, no matter who is lined up under center for Arkansas. And Arkansas, look, if Arkansas's got Jefferson and Sanders, then it's wildly entertaining on that side too, because it's a huge difference when he's in there, and Ole Miss has been vulnerable to good offenses. But I just think, and especially with Jefferson's help, let's say he plays, who's to say that clavicle doesn't get hit, and he gets knocked out or hampered early. I just think in a game where you got some mixed signals and it's hard to find certainty, I just feel like there's a little bit more of that on the Rebels side right now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, KJ Jefferson does add. He's much more skilled in that RPO passing game that Briles likes to use over there. And I think they would have more of a chance through the air than they would with either Fortin or Hornsby if they do play this game. And it's not like Ole Miss is some impenetrable defense either. They've given up their fair share of yards on the year, so definitely more interesting. But I agree with you. I think in that Alabama game with Arkansas, what you saw was poor tackling in space, right? And I think that Quinshaw Junkins can make you pay for that. Now the question is, do they get Zach Evans back or not? That would be even more of a potent combination. Zach Evans was out, I believe. Garrett Danielson was saying he looked a little woozy, so I'm not sure if it was a head injury or what happened with Zach Evans. I know he was just getting back from a knee injury, but then they lost him again during that game, Alabama. So, like you said, I think the matchup bodes well for Ole Miss at this current time, and I'm going to take Ole Miss to win and cover.
Yeah, and Ole Miss has got Ulysses Bentley too, although he's not been much of a factor lately for whatever reason. But he was a transfer, I think, from Houston that was supposed to really help them. But what did you say you took there?
I'm going to take Ole Miss to win and cover.
Okay, I'm going to take both. The question is the over-under. I feel like if Jefferson doesn't play, and we're not professional bettors, don't claim to be, don't want to be, but I feel like the under might be a pretty good play if Jefferson's out here too.
Yeah, always got to look at that weather and all that kind of stuff too. It's getting colder. Points are less abounding, it seems, Chris.
Yeah, predicted final in this one, according to Vegas, 32-28 in Arkansas's favor. So anyway, he's Blayne Gilmer. I'm Chris Lee. We are picking every single SEC game every week. Best way to catch that, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14.